Welcome to the American Law Café. Today, we're not just looking at history, we're treating the founding of the United States as what it really was, a high-stakes four-part legal thriller. You're going to see how each of these famous documents was a direct response to a huge problem created by the one before it. All right, let's begin the proceedings. So, picture this. You've just won a revolution against the world's greatest superpower. I mean, congratulations, now what? You've got 13 fiercely independent, kind of rival states, and this vast new territory. How in the world do you turn all that chaos into a single, functioning country? That right there was the immense legal challenge facing the founders.
Look, the answer didn't come from some single stroke of genius. It was a process, an evolution. The best way to think about it is like a four-act play. First, you win recognition on the world stage. Then, you have to design the actual machinery of government. After that, you've got to persuade the public to even accept it. And finally, you have to add the brakes to protect their liberty.
Act 1 begins not with a constitution, but with a verdict. You see, the Treaty of Paris wasn't just a simple peace agreement. It was America's legal birth certificate, the official document that finally put the new nation on the map.
And what's just incredible is how fast this all went down. After the huge victory at Yorktown, this absolute dream team of negotiators, we're talking John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and John Jay, they head over to Paris. And in just under a year, they secured the terms that would literally define a continent.
And what terms they were. Seriously, this wasn't just a win, it was a grand slam. The U.S. was recognized as fully independent. They got these incredibly generous borders, basically doubling the size of the original colonies. Plus, they locked down vital economic rights like fishing off Canada and free trade on the Mississippi. This treaty handed the new nation a treasure chest of assets. But here's the thing. This amazing victory created an immediate, critical problem. The United States now had this massive territory, but its government, under the old Articles of Confederation, was super weak, totally broke, and a complete mess. How could a loose league of states possibly manage all this new land and potential? And that brings us to Act 2, the Constitution. This was the radical, super risky solution to the chaos. And this wasn't just some minor tweak. It was a complete teardown and rebuild of the entire system of government. It was a blueprint for a whole new kind of nation. The core idea here, the big innovation, was this concept of a federal republic. And you've got to understand, this was a revolutionary theory. Power wouldn't come from a king or from 13 separate little state governments. No, it would come from we the people. The ultimate authority would be a written document that everyone, even the government itself, had to obey. And this new architecture of power was laid out in Articles 1, 2, and 3. It's a simple but honestly genius design. You get a legislator to write the laws, an executive to enforce them, and a judiciary to interpret them. 3 co-equal branches, each with a separate job, all designed to keep each other in line. So let's see how that works in practice. Okay, so imagine Congress passes a new law, but the president, heading the executive branch, thinks it's a terrible idea. Well, he can use the veto power, a direct check on legislative authority. Boom, the law is stopped in its tracks. But the president isn't a king, right? So if Congress feels strongly enough, it can fight back. With a 2/3 vote in both the House and the Senate, it can override that veto. That's a powerful check on the executive, making sure one person can't just ignore the will of the people's representatives.
And then there's the ultimate umpire. Even if a law passes Congress and is signed by the president, the judicial branch can step in. The courts can declare that law unconstitutional, striking it down because it violates the fundamental rules of the game. That right there is the system of checks and balances in a nutshell.
So the design was elegant for sure, but the sales pitch, that was going to be tough. You have to remember, many Americans had just finished a war against tyranny. They looked at this powerful new central government and were deeply suspicious. I mean, they saw a president who looked an awful lot like a king. Ratification was anything but a sure thing. This brings us to Act 3. To win over a skeptical public, the Constitution supporters launched what was basically the most effective public relations campaign in American history, the Federalist Papers. This was their closing argument, presented to the court of public opinion. And the debate was fierce. The anti-federalists feared a new tyranny, a powerful president, and crucially, the lack of explicit protections for their rights. But the Federalists had an answer for everything.
They argued a large republic was actually safer, not more dangerous. Checks and balances would prevent abuse. And a Bill of Rights? Get this, they argued it was actually a bad idea. So who was writing these essays under the pen name Publius? It was a legal powerhouse. James Madison provided the deep philosophy, John Jay handled foreign policy, but the real workhorse was Alexander Hamilton. I mean, look at this. He wrote a staggering 51 of the 85 essays, relentlessly making the case for a strong, unified nation.
And this one quote from Madison, it just perfectly captures the logic of the entire system. See, the Constitution wasn't based on the naive hope that leaders would all be angels. It assumed they would be ambitious. So it brilliantly harnesses that very ambition, setting the branches against each other in a way that protects liberty.
But even these brilliant arguments weren't quite enough. To get the Constitution over the finish line, a deal had to be made. And that brings us to Act 4, the promise of a Bill of Rights. This was the final, crucial compromise.
The Federalists, like Hamilton here, genuinely resisted a Bill of Rights at first, and their argument was actually pretty logical. They said, hey, if the Constitution doesn't give the government the power to control the press, why do you need an amendment saying it can't? They were worried that listing some rights would imply that any rights they forgot to list weren't protected.
But at the end of the day, the people demanded a guarantee. Several key states basically said they wouldn't ratify without one. So the Federalists agreed to the deal. And in a great twist of irony, James Madison, who had originally opposed the idea, took the lead, drafting 12 proposed amendments. 10 of those were ratified by 1791, and they became the Bill of Rights we know today. And this shield is just as relevant now as it ever was. I mean, the First Amendment's protections for speech, that's at the heart of every single debate over social media. The Fourth Amendment's shield against unreasonable searches, that's central to digital privacy and surveillance. And the Fifth and Sixth Amendments, well, they're the bedrock of our entire criminal justice system. If you remember one thing, remember this simple analogy. The Constitution created a powerful engine of government, one designed to act and unify the country. The Bill of Rights installed the emergency brake, a set of absolute limits to make sure that powerful engine never runs over the rights of the people it was built to serve. So there you have it, the four-step legal journey. First, the Treaty of Paris wins independence and a ton of assets. Second, the Constitution builds the structure to actually manage them. Third, the Federalist Papers sell that new structure to a skeptical public. And fourth, the Bill of Rights protects the people from that very structure. Each step logically follows from the last.
You see, that founding legal evolution, that constant tension between power and liberty, it isn't just history. It continues to shape every major legal and political debate in America today. If you like this explainer, be sure to subscribe for more breakdowns just like it. And for a longer discussion, check out our companion show, American Law Café, available wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us.